Set.
There is some dialogue in an Ernest Hemingway book called The Sun Also Rises, in which one of his characters, Bill, goes to another Mike and says, "How did you go bankrupt?" And Mike's reply is two ways: gradually and then suddenly. And then I read a variation on that quote in an article that was written probably about a year ago now by Marina Hyde. It was an excellent piece in which she was discussing Team Sky and Brailsford and Brad Wiggins, in which she said that Team Sky lost their credibility in cycling in the same way that people go bankrupt, which is to say gradually and then all at once. And it struck me this past weekend that you could apply those same words, that same concept, to what we have seen unfolding here in Cape Town, where on Saturday the Australian cricket team admitted that they had deliberately tried to cheat by changing the condition of the ball. If you haven't followed that story, or you're not familiar with cricket, basically what happened was that their captain, Steve Smith, and one of their players held a press conference on Saturday after being questioned by the match officials during the day's play, and they basically said, yes, during lunch we'd had a meeting and we decided that because things weren't going our way and it was an important match, we decided that we would try and alter the condition of the ball. Now, when you get a confession of deliberate and premeditated cheating, it's obviously a big deal, and the fallout from this has been swift and dramatic. Now, most of that has been, I guess, unsurprisingly condemnation, particularly from back in Australia, where there is a deep sense of shame at what their players have done while representing the country. My perspective, and I'm saying this as an observer, an outsider who's not necessarily in the sport, but has followed other sports and cheating in other sports for the last decade, is that what happens at the weekend, the moment at which Steve Smith and his players cross the line, is not an isolated event that exists randomly. It's actually the logical progression of a loss of an organizational culture that pushes back against cheating. Now, at this point, one has to, I guess, define what cheating means. But if I look at doping, to give us some illustration of this, remember a few weeks ago, the report came out on Team Sky and their use of medical products to gain an advantage. In my opinion, that's cheating, because you are giving an athlete a banned drug that he doesn't need in the guise of it being for medical purposes, when it's actually not. That's both unethical and, I believe, cheating. The problem is it's not covered in law as cheating. And so the people who wanted to defend Wiggins and Sky were saying they did nothing illegal. I mean, even Stephen Redgrave, the multiple Olympic gold medal winning rower, said the same kind of thing, which to me is the kind of very dangerous moral relativism that slips into our thinking and which ultimately provides fertile ground for what could become outright cheating. Because you see, once you enter the gray areas, then you get progressively darker and darker and darker gray. And at some point, there's a line. But by the time you get to that line, you're so deep in the gray that you can't see a black line on a dark gray background. And you cross that line. And if I look at what's happened in the cricket in the last few weeks, and in fact, this goes back years, we see players who are willing to do what it takes to win. No compromise, win at all costs. Do whatever it takes. Doesn't matter how nasty you have to be, how aggressive you have to be, whatever lengths you have to go to. You have to do that because it's expected of you. And this is a quote from the Times at the weekend in which they talk about how the Australian public expects their team to go right up to the line. Now, that's probably a generalization, and to my Australian friends, I realize many of you don't want this. But there are enough people who do, in the same way that there are enough people in cycling who are quite happy to go all the way up to the line and take TUEs that they don't need and take drugs that aren't actually prescribed for them. And when those people exist in positions of authority, then crossing the line is easy. Then you need the next ingredient, which is the incentives have to be the right size. Now that means one of two things. It either means that the consequences of losing or the rewards for winning have to be large enough to justify taking that next step, crossing that line. And that takes different forms for different people. It could be a big financial prize, it could be pride, it could be the fear of loss, it could be the fear of losing face, whatever the case is. But take a look at these words from the press conference that Steve Smith had here in Cape Town on Saturday night. He says, We saw this game as such an important game. Not that other games aren't important as well, but an opportunity. We've seen the ball reversing quite a lot throughout the series, and our ball just didn't look like it was going to go. Now, what he's basically saying there is that this is an important game. The stakes are high. Win this game, and we can't lose the series. It's an opportunity to do well. But we're doing the best that we can, and it's not working. We can't get the ball to do what we need it to do in order to win this important game. Therefore, we're going to take the next step. That's basically what he's done. His desire to succeed, or his fear of not succeeding, given that it's not working at the moment, has led him to take that next step. Now compare that to this, which led ultimately to the loss of credibility for Sky. It's from a book on their success, and it quotes Dave Brailsford, the mastermind of marginal gains, who set himself the target of leading the first British team to win the Tour de France. Sometimes I set a target and then get home and say, did we really decide to do that? And here's the key. Then fear kicks in, and the fear of defeat makes me do the things we need to do to win. I won't allow anyone to imagine an obstacle is insurmountable. To do the things we need to do to win. No obstacle is insurmountable. That is win at all costs, zero compromise, whatever it takes thinking. That's the kind of thinking in the right person, under the right circumstances, that will lead them to very easily take the next step. You can't now say that we're going to go up to the line but never beyond it, given that you have this fear of failure or the desire to win, and you've been willing to do everything up to that point. It was expected of you, but you're going to stop now. That to me is completely unrealistic. And so when the media, when the fans, when the sponsors, when the team members, when there's a culture within an organization, a mindset or an attitude of do what it takes, just win, no matter what, when that culture exists and we push people up to the line, then of course we're going to push them beyond the line. And so we should not be surprised that people cheat. Imagine you went to your financial advisor and you said to him, here's $1 million. I want you to double this in the next 18 months by any means necessary. You do whatever it takes. I don't care. I don't want to know. You just come back here with $2 million in 18 months' time. I think it's very clear that if you did that, you would have given that financial advisor a mandate to go out and to do anything that was necessary to succeed. He would be permitted to do things that were unethical, to do things that he would not be proud of telling anyone about, and he probably wouldn't, and potentially to do things that are outright illegal. Now, you would hope that you have a financial advisor who has the integrity to not go there, and he would know what he can and can't do before things start to become unethical and illegal for him. But the problem is, it's the same thing that we do for athletes in sport. We tell them, you go out and you win us cricket matches, you win us Olympic medals, you win us bicycle races by any means necessary. And of course, there are going to be some people, I don't know what proportion, but there is a subset of people who will take that mandate and literally apply it and do anything that it takes in order to win. Now I realize, and I don't want to trivialize or downplay this, I realize that there are a number of people out there who do have the integrity, who have a zero compromise attitude towards their own integrity, and who would not go and exceed ethical and transgress or cross legal boundaries. I get that, and those people obviously are very valuable to the overall integrity of the system. But there are enough people who don't have it. And those are the people who, in the right culture or the right organization with the right mindset, are so ripe or so vulnerable to taking the next step and the next step and the next step and eventually cheating, that's why I say that cheating is a consequence of a mindset that exists beyond one individual. And therefore, when we see cheating behavior, it does happen gradually and then all at once. And it's that gradual build-up towards falling off the cliff, that moment of bankruptcy, that I think deserves more attention. Because if we want to stamp it out, we have to stamp out all the small little things that are done at a system level, from an organization-wide culture, attitude, mindset level, that facilitate or provide the fertile ground for that point at which the person crosses the line and becomes outright bankrupt. Anyway, that's my mull for today. next time maybe we'll tackle something around data or some scientific thing instead of this philosophy. But thanks for watching and join me then. Ciao.